to the In-Tune Guitar Academy. Today we're here with Steve Taunton of Barrie, Ontario. Barrie is a short drive of about an hour from Toronto. Steve is a singer-songwriter and guitar player, and today we're going to be talking to him about songwriting and his guitar playing. So Steve, welcome to the In-Tune Guitar Academy.
Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
To start off with, I just wanted to know how long you've been playing. So when did you start playing? How old were you?
Well, music's been in my family my whole life. My father and my uncles and my aunt all played music. So I learned my first 4 chords from my dad at about probably 10 or 11.
Okay.
But it wasn't for me. I was more into, playing sports and that sort of thing. But when I was 14 years old, I was grounded for a month and wasn't allowed, video games and that sort of thing. So I picked up the guitar, and that's really when I started to play.
So what did you do to ground you for a month?
Can
you share that with the public?
Yeah, I can share it with the public. So basically, it was a B&E.
Oh no!
Well, sort of. So let me qualify that. There was my grandmother lived next to this little this in-ground pool that had like a hut that you could rent, and it was a little hut, it had a little bedroom and that sort of thing. And anyway, friends of mine and I broke into it, and no one was using it at the time. We broke into it and spent the night there, but it got around to my father, and he showed up and plucked us out of there and grounded me for a month. So
you weren't actually stealing anything?
No,
we were using something.
We were just hanging out there. We had, if I remember correctly, we had some concoction of liquor that was taken from bits and pieces of my buddy's father's liquor cabinets.
We called it jungle juice.
Jungle juice, yes. It was green and it was disgusting. And anyway, yeah. So we were there. We were having a good time. All of a sudden, we heard pounding on the door, and that was my father, and he was not impressed. So we jumped the fence to my grandmother's place and told her to tell my dad that we'd been there the whole night. But anyway, the jig was up.
So that you can almost thank your grandmother for teaching you how to play guitar.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because if it wasn't for her shed, you wouldn't have been grounded.
That's true.
So you've been playing, I guess, for about 40 odd years then?
Yeah, I guess so. Let's see. I really started playing in bands and stuff when I was 17. So that would be like 37 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you self-taught, or did you take any lessons?
Yeah, no, my dad showed me those first 4 chords, which was the key of G major, G, E minor, C, and D, and I just ran with it. I immediately wrote a song called Night Shift Sharon, and that's the way I've always been. I've never been much for learning other people's material.
Okay.
But as soon as I learned 4 chords, I started writing songs and went from there.
So I guess you mentioned already your dad was your close personal influence.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Like any brothers or cousins or uncles?
My uncles. So from the time I was an infant to the time I was 7, I lived with my grandparents and my father, his 3 brothers, and his aunt, and they were all musicians. Not my grandparents, but the children were all musicians, and so there was always guitar. Christmas was amazing. Everyone played guitar and sang, and it was a great way to grow up. And I lived there until I was 7, and then eventually my father remarried, and I moved in with my stepmother and my father.
Okay.
And then continued playing guitar.
Mm.
But guitar has always been a bond for my father and I. That's like, it's how we bond.
Okay, so your father's still living?
He is.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in a few years. We've been out of touch, but he lives up north of Huntsville.
Nice.
On a really nice piece of property on lakefront.
Nice area.
Yeah, very.
You mentioned that you were in a band in high school. How long did that last for?
Okay, so my first band, I don't even remember what we were called. I think we were called Andromeda. It was
good name. I like it.
Yeah. It was 4 of us. Yeah, it was myself on guitar. No, we didn't have a bass player. So it was myself on guitar, another guy, Charles, on rhythm guitar, my friend Gil on drums, and my friend Rob on keyboards. And we played one show. It was a variety show, and we were like, it was clean tone. It was instrumental stuff that I wrote, which was really, really quite lame. And anyway, we played a show, a very lackluster show. And then the cool kids in high school, who were a year ahead of us, they were in a band called AM/FM, which eventually became King Griffin. And they were like a rock band,
okay,
and much cooler than what we did. And then I eventually joined up with those guys a few years later,
all right, nice,
and played with them. And we didn't really have a name at the time, but it was that was my first real rock band.
Okay, did you do any touring at all?
Not at all. We never even played a show.
No,
we just rehearsed, and it started to sound pretty good. The vocalist Ron, he kind of had like a Zeppelin vibe to him, like a Robert Plant vibe to him. The other guitar player, Glenn, was a great guitarist. He had like he had a Kramer with a Floyd Rose, and I was playing like this Hagstrom from like, the 60s with single coil pickups that would squeal. And anyway, but we, it was fun. It was a lot of fun, but we never played shows. And then I moved to Toronto.
Okay. From Montreal, right?
Yeah, from Montreal, yeah. For a job opportunity and the opportunity to play music, because the Montreal scene at that point, which was like the 90s, or late 80s, early 90s, was mostly EDM.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of rock stuff happening in the scene, whereas Toronto had a really, really, really rocking rock scene. So,
yeah, well, I've always loved Toronto for hanging out and for listening to music. When I lived here, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So that was great. Once I moved here, I got into a number of different rock bands over the years. The most notable back then, in the 90s, I was in a band called Porno Graffiti, which is the name of Extreme's second album, and we were an Extreme tribute band.
Right.
And I was Nuno.
Nice.
And that's back when my chops were
big shoes to fill.
Yeah, that's for sure. Extreme was popular for about 15 minutes. So we took advantage of that, and
who's this guy?
This guy's name is Knife Party.
Knife Party.
He's named after a Deftones tune. Yeah, that's Knife Party.
That's right.
He's nowhere near as threatening as his name might suggest. Anyway, yeah, and that's and then Porno turned into an original band. We kept the name Porno Graffiti, but we did original stuff, and then I was in a band called Love Lies Bleeding.
I know that song. Yeah.
There's Elton John song.
No, but there's also there's a newer song, "Love Lies Bleeding." Anyway, they use that same line.
Yeah. So those are the early days, and then Nothing Box happened when I was 30, so around 2000. And the main reason I got tired of dealing with singers. I was always the guitar player in the band, and I had some really great singers, but just interpersonally, it was not. I don't know. I had issues working with singers, so I started singing myself.
Musicians tend to have big egos.
That's
one thing I've come across in just about every band I've come into being was lots of ego issues.
Absolutely, LSD, lead singer disease. So so I started. That happened, and also. I started on medication. I'm bipolar, and I got diagnosed when I was 30, and was put on a myriad of medications, and a couple of them really, really messed up my hands as far as like tremors and shakes and stuff. So I couldn't play the way that I was used to playing, which was very technical, very so I had to adjust the way I wrote and the way I played. And I quite frankly started writing much better songs.
Oh, really?
Because they were more about the song.
Less guitar based.
Yeah. I mean, the guitar was there for sure, but it wasn't like, I remember when I played in a band right before Nothing Box, my singer would be like, I'd write the music, and he'd be like, where am I supposed to sing? Like, there's no room here. There's too much guitar. So once that happened with the medication and my hands were badly affected, I had to adjust the way I played, and which adjusted the way I wrote as well, and frankly, the writing got a lot better. And then I eventually figured out which meds were causing the tremors, and I came off those meds and went on alternate meds, and my chops came back to a large degree. I can't play like I did when I was 19, but
No.
but you know, I've got some chops. You know, I'm a decent lead player again, so it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Okay, good stuff.
Yeah.
I admire the fact that you're so open about it. Not many people are open about that type of disability, having bipolar disease. So, how does that affect you in personal life?
It affects me profoundly. And the thing is, so I got diagnosed when I was 30, but I was ill. I've been ill since my adolescence, and possibly even before that. And with bipolar, and I won't turn this into a psychology lesson, but with bipolar, you know, it's manic depression. You have, you know, periods of really elevated mood, which is mania, and you have periods of depression.
Okay.
And the depression can be really crippling. And I always understood it to be, you know, manic depression, happy, sad. And that's not what it is. I mean, it is to a certain degree, right? Like hypomania, which is mild mania, is something that is pleasant, and it's something that's leverageable, and it's something that you can use to be creative and to be productive and all those good things, you know. And it served me well in my career. It served me well in music. But eventually what happens is the mania elevates beyond where it is comfortable, or not comfortable, but leverageable,
Okay.
and pleasant, and it gets to a point where you become irritable and overstimulated and that sort of thing. And if you let it go, if you don't address it, this is bipolar 1, by the way. Bipolar 2 is a different animal, but I'm bipolar 1. If you let it get ahead of you, it becomes psychosis. You know, you become paranoid, and a lot of the symptoms of schizophrenia are common. Yeah, are common in bipolar. You become psychotic. So I got diagnosed at 30 after years of really bizarre, strange behavior that we you know, kind of chalked up as, he's an artist, he's eccentric,
right.
You know. And anyway, so now I'm medicated and relatively well controlled.
Well, I get the feeling a lot of the bad drug habits that we've learned about in the past, like Kurt Cobain, Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, I think they all had some sort of
mental illness.
Undiagnosed mental illness, and they fell into the drugs and the alcohol.
Yeah.
And then that gave rock stars that stigma that they're all druggies, they're all, and it's not true. Like guys like Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey, they partied a bit, I'm sure, but they weren't strung out.
No, absolutely, and that's another thing. Like, so I was a late bloomer when it came to drugs. When I was in my teens and in my 20s, playing in bands and, you know, and in that scene, I never touched a drug. And it's not that I had particularly, you know, had an issue with drugs. I mean, what I mean by that is I wasn't an anti-drug person per se. I just didn't need it because I was manic. I was high on my own juices, my own brain. I didn't do drugs, and it's not because I was, you know, I'm against drugs, I'm not going to do drugs. It was because I was manic constantly, and so I was always kind of high on my own juices, and so I never had the desire to use any illicit drugs. And then you know, in my 30s, my mania started to turn against me, and it started to become psychosis, and the depression really became a factor in my life, and that's actually when I started using illicit drugs.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's pretty heavy. It's just I'm not qualified to really talk about this kind of stuff too much. But
I apologize if that made you uncomfortable.
No, it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I just don't want to. I don't have enough knowledge to be able to continue on talking about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, so what do you look for in other guitar players? So what do you look for in other musicians? What do you make a good musician, a good guitar player?
Okay, a lot of different things. I mean, my favorite guitar player is Nuno Bettencourt, who's from Extreme. And I discovered him in 1989, and you know, he was just a beast of a guitar player. That was their first album. But the thing about him is he had a similar style, especially rhythmically, to me. Only he was a better player, and so that gave me something to aspire to. You know, before him influences on me were my first lead guitar influence was Ace Frehley.
Right. There's so many people that say that.
Yeah. Oh, he was. I loved him, and I remember I used to say to my girlfriend, you know, if I could ever just play like Ace, I'd be happy. That's all I need to do.
You talk about drug addiction. Ace, he got kicked out of Kiss because of his
party.
Yeah,
big party. And then it was Randy Rhoads. That was my next guy. These days, I think the guys who you hear in my playing, you hear their fingerprints are Nino Bettencourt for sure, and Dave Gilmour from Pink Floyd,
right.
As the lead player. A lot of my more melodic stuff is
I think David Gilmour is probably one of the most underrated guitar players. He doesn't fit into that guitar god, but he should, because I find he's one of the best.
He's incredible. As far as Strat players, you know, that kind of classic rock style. Such an emotive player, and he's got chops too. A lot of people think, you know, he's all about melody, which he mostly is. He serves the song, but he's got chops. He can play, man.
Well, yeah,
he's a great player.
Listen to the outro of "Comfortably Numb." I don't know anybody that can imitate it properly. I've heard lots of people do it. One of my close friends does a fairly good job of imitating, but nowhere close to Gilmour.
His feel, right? And for me, my favorite Gilmour solo is "Time." And I very rarely learn other people's songs or parts, but that song I learned because it's just my favorite. It's my favorite solo, and I think it's really underrated. He's a great player. He's a great writer, a great singer, just phenomenal musician.
It's too bad they fell out, Roger Waters and him.
Yeah. Roger's he's a little narcissistic.
He's out there,
megalomaniac. Yeah,
I've seen a few videos of him lately, and wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, anybody who's on the side of Putin,
Yeah, that too, his political views are a little skewed, for sure.
You also, I think you admire Zakk Wylde quite a bit.
Quite a bit. He's, I don't know if I put him top 5, but I really love all the guys that Ozzy got. You know, Randy for you know, a brief period, I was Randy. Everything I did, I didn't necessarily learn his songs, but my style was very, very, very pentatonic minor type stuff. And I think Jakey Lee's, you know, a really underrated guitar player as well. And then Zakk, you know, he's a great player, great aggression, little processed tone for my taste. A lot of chorus, a lot of wah and stuff, but fantastic player. Very, very big with the pinch harmonics. That's the other thing about him. And I think it's cool that he's doing the Pantera thing right now, touring with Pantera. Yeah, I think he's doing a great job.
Anybody that can take the place of Dimebag Darrell.
Yeah, and they were best friends, right? So you know that Dime, you know, if he was around, he'd be giving it 2 thumbs up for sure, because he loves Zakk. So.
I guess you'd consider Nuno Bettencourt as one of the best guitar players around today. Anybody else?
I'd say Nuno is the best, and he's finally, with this new single, with that crazy guitar solo, he's getting the everybody in the business. Everybody in the business already knew he was a thug, but now, you know, the general population, like, this solo is being treated like the new Eruption. And it is, you know, and it's an obvious nod to Eddie, without being derivative. It's an ode to him. It's an homage to him. He's my guy. He's my guitar guy. I'm not necessarily the biggest extreme fan. I like them, but mainly for the guitar.
Well, they're very poppy.
They can be. I mean, you know, and they're known for more than words, right?
That played on the Adult Contemporary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bye.